Hello and welcome to GPTV on Tuesday the 2nd of April. My name's Philip Kingston.
And I'm Gary Peer.
And I'd love to say, Gary, that we're sitting here exhausted from the huge weekend in real estate, the Easter weekend in real estate. We're not exhausted, other than the fact that we've had a few days off.
We have, haven't we?
We might be exhausted from a few days off, but it was a quiet week in Melbourne real estate because Melbourne real estate really just closes down from an auction point of view because of the Easter holidays.
Yeah,
so,
and I noticed you haven't got changed since last week, Philip. You're still wearing the same outfit.
No, for those of you
you've been in it the whole week.
For those of you like Ashley who would be looking now, checking back to last week's episode to say why, given they're really well-dressed guys,
we had a good week in real estate the week before. Why did it change?
Why would they not have changed? Now, the first viewer to send us the correct email in as to why we're still in last week's close wins a prize. Don't know what the prize is yet, but we will have a prize.
Won't be a trip overseas.
No,
It'll be something nice.
It will be something nice.
In between like $5 a trip overseas.
Somewhere between
I think
those two
we
points.
should talk about where we are, Phil, because we are in a lovely home here, right in the heart of Almond. And this is a great suburb, Phil. And this is a great home, number 13 Malua Street, Almond. We're sitting in the beautifully north-oriented back garden of this home. Tell us a bit about this home.
Well, what a fantastic home, Gary, and we'll give you some footage of the house at the moment. Beautiful mixture of period features, modern luxuries, flowing floor plan, good entertaining areas. But one thing that viewers need to understand about the value to this home, obviously it's a gorgeous home, but this area has become a real focal point for Melbourne because the Almond McKinnon area just gets stronger and stronger, and it's underpinned by really great shopping, fantastic parklands, and of course access to one of the best schools in Melbourne, which is the McKinnon High School.
Yeah, and this is in the zone. This
and people are paying a premium now to be able to buy into this location for all of those facilities, but to be able to have the right to send their kids to that school.
If we had a graph of suburbs, this would surely be one of the fastest moving suburbs, even through the difficult 2011, 2012, I've got my years right this week, Phil, 2011, 2012 years where things were a bit quiet. This suburb continued to move, and it moved certainly a lot more than other suburbs.
Having said that, Gary, we don't have a graph because we do run the show on a very tight budget, and
we're very frugal about this.
Just couldn't afford the graph.
No, but maybe next year.
But if we did have a graph, Gary's absolutely
we're one
right.
sale off that graph.
This is an incredible area. Gary, we've just come through the Easter weekend. Obviously, that we had plenty of open for inspections, so we were working as per normal. But the auctions just didn't happen because every year we just take this break and go away. Where'd you go?
Very good. I've been to Sydney, Philip.
And I was in Sydney. In fact, we had dinner together on Saturday night.
We did. It was great, wasn't it?
At a fabulous restaurant, which we haven't been to yet, even though we were in Sydney this weekend.
But it was and is going to be very good, isn't it?
There's a tip for you. What a great time we had.
Having.
Sydney is a fantastic place.
Yes.
I did take the opportunity to have a look at some real estate. I spent a bit of time in North Bondi, Dover Heights.
Is that factual, is it?
No, absolutely factual.
That's right.
Stayed in the city. And I actually was lucky enough to get a room at the Western Hotel.
Yes.
And I'm mentioning the Western Hotel, Gary, because my PA is going to ring the Western now, say we gave you a free plug. Could we get some free nights that we could give away on GPTV?
Just a week of them or something like that.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We hope to have some good news on that soon.
This week we have a very different chapter, Philip, because this week we are talking about how to buy real estate. A unique and special chapter, a special GPTV expose on how to buy real estate. So let's go through the steps, Philip, because a lot of people here, there's an amazing variety of people that watch this show. There's very educated people, people that are way smarter than us, which is probably just about everyone.
Any viewer.
But any viewer, exactly. But some people are interested to know, where do we start in this whole real estate
Okay, so we're going to do this right from the start. So if somebody wakes up tomorrow and says, you know what, it's time to trade up, trade down, buy an investment property, what's the first thing that I do?
Finance, number one. Go and get yourself your finance. You need to see a mortgage broker or see your bank and get your finance organised, because when you have your finance organised, you are in a powerful position to buy property.
Okay, so it starts with finance because at the end of the day, people, if they saw their dream property tomorrow, they don't want to be nervous about, can I afford to buy it? Will I get the finance? So it all basically starts with get your finance in place so that if I do see something that I want to buy tomorrow, I've got the confidence.
Now, some people will say, well, I can buy subject to finance, or I can buy, perhaps with a very small deposit and a little bit more later, and see if that's acceptable. The issue is, ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand that every time you are unable to offer a strong offer financially, the price will be higher, your negotiating position weakens. So once you can come to the table with a 10% deposit with an unconditional contract, and you will need to buy that way at auction anyway, you are empowered to buy.
But let's talk about the whole subject of finance things, because in our office, and I think we're a good snapshot of an agency in the inner suburbs. We would have maybe 1 in 200 transactions that would be subject to finance, because most of our vendors want unconditional contracts.
They're moving on.
So it all starts with get your finance in place. What's the next thing?
So the number 2 step, Philip, is understanding the property's value. And that's a very, very
important.
And how do
you do that, Gary?
Well, you need to really get an idea of the comparable sales in the area, Phil. And what you're going to find is that agents that are representing vendors, as ourselves, and many other agents, and some agents actually will print comparable sales for you, which on one hand is helpful. On the other hand, I would have to say that a lot of those are very, very loaded and weighted in the vendor's favour and are selected. So get a cross-section. That's why it's a good idea to have a relationship with a real estate agent that can help you in terms of helping your buying needs, can tell you what other properties...
I think that's a bit self-serving. I mean, if this is going to be a show, if this is going to be a show about educating our viewers, you can't be self-serving. So I'm going to take a slightly different tact on that.
You've got to understand the value. Who's going to tell you that?
You've got to get out in the market, you've got to put in the time, going from open for inspection to auction, getting the research done. Once you've decided you want to buy a 2-bedroom apartment, you need to have a look at a whole lot of 2-bedroom apartments and get a sense of the understanding. If you want to buy a house that's on 700 square metres of land, you need to get out and have a look at all of those houses on either side. Yes, it's useful to have a relationship with an agent like Gary Peer and Associates.
Well, it didn't have to be us.
Where we can give you a lot
with another real estate agent.
We can give you a lot of information, not only about what we sell, but we can uncover every other agent's sale.
Yes.
So
a relationship with an agent will uncover information that's not immediately or easily accessible. So number 2 is to get that information. Yes, independently sourcing it, I agree with you.
Number 3, Gary, is probably the most important in my opinion. And that is, if a property is a 7 out of 10 or more, then it's a buy. There is absolutely no such thing unless you've got an unlimited budget. There is no such thing as a 9 or a 10 out of 10. A 7 out of 10 or more means you've got to seriously consider putting an offer in and buying it. A 5 out of 10, there's plenty of 5 out of 10s or 4 out of 10, so you can afford to move on from those. But as soon as a house fits your requirements or an apartment fits your requirements and you can say, yep, this is a 7 out of 10, you've got to buy it.
So your point number 3 is compromise. There is no perfect property. A 7 out of 10 is a buy. Number 4 point, Philip, is get a solicitor. You'll need someone to check the documents. Sometimes a property can look fantastic, but it may have some legal issues that you're not aware of. Get a solicitor, get the documents checked first. It's always fantastic practice, and many solicitors will not charge you for doing that if you give them the job of settling conveyancing. The final point is how to actually negotiate a purchase. This is a really important one, and one that you need to be aware of and think about. Certainly, ladies and gentlemen, it's about bidding at auction. You need to know that you should set yourself an absolute limit, whatever that limit is.
And then go well over it.
One of our auctions. Set yourself an absolute limit. So in setting a limit, make the limit maybe a limit that you think you could absolutely stretch to worst case scenario. I'm not saying you should have to spend that, but you want to be very, very sure in an auction situation. If it goes for $1,000 more, you are at peace with walking away. Set yourself a limit. If it's a private sale, of course, put your offers down.
Let's talk about limits, because one of the pieces of advice I give my friends and family is that if they're going to stay in the property for the medium to long term, and keep in mind there is a kind of saying in Melbourne that property values double every 10 years. Now, whether it's 9, 10, 11 or 12, let's just run with doubles in value every 10 years. If you buy a property today for $500,000, theoretically, in 10 years' time, it's going to be worth $1 million.
Yes.
So if you said that its value is 500 and you paid 550, right? So it's just 10% more than the value that you thought it was worth. But in 10 years' time, it's going to be worth $1 million. Does it really make any difference? So I always say to my friends and family, look, find out, set yourself a limit, but if you've got to go over it by 5 or 10% and you're going to be there for the medium to long term, it really just doesn't matter. Assuming you can afford to make the repayments.
And the same applies for a private sale. You know, just set yourself a limit and make sure that, you know, obviously you can buy it for as less as that limit as possible, but do look at the long term. There's no question that's number 5. So we have had a few chapters, one on presentation, one on, I think we've had a couple of chapters on buying off the plan. We've now got this chapter up and away. Just a couple of properties to review really quickly for this weekend. That property in Barclay Street, St Kilda, Philip. That one's going to be on Saturday, Philip, at 12:30. In fact, I've got an agent from Perth who's rung me, wants to see us in action. He's going to come down, so welcome to him.
Coming all the way from Perth.
Yeah.
How about we sell it prior to the auction?
Yeah, that's right.
And not let him know.
Yeah, well, we could do that if we were those sort of people.
Fun.
On Sunday, Philip, at 10:30, we're going to be at 2 Royal Parade in Caulfield South, the home that last week's GPTV
when you look
edition was
so
there.
magnificent in that suit that you haven't changed from.
And we have got that unit, Edinburgh Avenue, going up on Sunday afternoon. That's 2 at 15 Edinburgh Avenue at 3:30.
That's more a house, Gary.
Yeah.
Main bedroom downstairs, 3 bedrooms and bathrooms upstairs.
Yep.
Gorgeous little plunge pool. That is a fantastic property.
It's been a long edition, but the buying of real estate edition, how to buy, is something that will go in the vault and be used in the future. We hope it helps you, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week on GPTV. I'm Gary Peer.
I'm Philip Kingston, but before we sign off, if you'd like any help buying a property through us or any other agents, if you're a viewer of GPTV, we're happy to give you advice with any property, anytime. Unconditionally.
You're a great guy, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. A lovely guy. Thanks for watching GPTV. We'll see you next week.